In 1956, he was the $125,000 star of the silver screen, the face of MGM's Forbidden Planet. 10 years later, he was out of a job, wandering the galaxy as a guest star for hire. Standing in his way was the newcomer, the shiny new B9 robot of the Jupiter 2. Both designed by the same man, both icons of the atomic age. But in February 1966, there wasn't room for both of them. Today, we're breaking down a title match between two heavyweights that was 10 years in the making. It's a battle of loyalty versus cold, hard programming, and it reaches into the very human heart of a beloved mechanical man. Now, if you like classic TV, movies, and nostalgia, you're going to love it here at Rerun Zone. So like, share, subscribe, and become a channel member. Now, let's get into it. Fantasy, sci-fi, horror, Rerun Zone. "10 years before he crash-landed on the Lost in Space set, Robbie the Robot was the breakout star of MGM's classic sci-fi movie, Forbidden Planet. He wasn't just a prop, he was a revolution in special effects. Designed by Robert Kinoshita, Robbie was a departure from the man-in-a-tin suit trope of the 1940s. With his translucent dome filled with spinning gears and his neon-lit mouth grill, he looked like a machine that actually functioned. He cost MGM roughly $125,000 to make. That's over $1 million in today's money, making him one of the most expensive cast members in the movie. When Kinoshita was hired for Lost in Space, he brought that same functional aesthetic to the B9 environmental control robot, otherwise known as just the robot. You can see the family resemblance in the tiered torsos and the glass-brained domes. But while the B9 was owned by 20th Century Fox, Robbie was still owned by MGM. By the mid-1960s, the era of the big studio sci-fi epic was beginning to fade, and MGM started renting out their expensive star robot to recoup the costs. That's how Robbie ended up working for Irwin Allen. While fans expected to hear the legendary Marvin Miller, who was the voice of Robbie in Forbidden Planet, the production actually tapped Ollie O'Toole to voice the Robotoid. This vocal change gave the machine a more cunning, treacherous personality that separated him from his hero roots. And inside the suit, Frankie Darro, one of the two original stuntmen who first brought Robbie to life 10 years earlier. He returned to climb into the 120-pound prop once again. When Robbie the Robot arrived on the set of Lost in Space, he wasn't Robbie anymore. To fit the script of War of the Robots, he had to become the Robotoid. The production team left Robbie mostly intact, as he already looked pretty dangerous. His sheer size did the talking. But if you look closely at the Robotoid in War of the Robots, you'll notice the lighting is a bit different from his movie debut. In Forbidden Planet, his mouth was a sophisticated neon sync system, 9 internal neon tubes that flickered blue as he spoke. For the TV budget of Lost in Space, that delicate movie tech was swapped out. It didn't have that organic flicker of the original neon. Instead, it had a sharper, more rhythmic flash. The robot suit itself was clunky and difficult to manage. The stuntman inside the Robotoid suit had to navigate the rocky, uneven floor of the planet set while wearing over 100 pounds of plastic, metal, and glass. Contrast that with Bob May inside the B9 suit, which was designed to be much more mobile, and you see why the fight feels less like a boxing match and more like a slow-motion collision of heavy machinery. There's also the height factor. Robbie stands 7 feet tall, while the B9 robot is around 6 foot 7 inches. Kinoshita's design for the B9 was wider and more grounded, meant to fit inside the tight corridors of the Jupiter 2. The Robotoid, though, was built to dominate the frame. In every shot of them together, the director uses that height to make our beloved robot look like the underdog, the little engine that could, facing off against a skyscraper of steel. The Robbie suit was also notoriously fragile by 1966. The durable ABS plastic that was used to construct Robbie was prone to cracking. During the filming of the fight, the crew had to be extremely careful because every time the B9 robot bumped into the Robotoid, they risked shattering a piece of cinema history that 20th Century Fox didn't even own. Now let's talk about the beloved B9 robot. While Robbie was the millionaire movie star guest, the B9 environmental control robot was the blue-collar hero of the production, and his origin is just as fascinating. Despite being a television prop, the B9 was far from cheap. It cost 20th Century Fox roughly $75,000 to construct in 1965, a staggering sum for a TV budget that reflects how central the character was to Irwin Allen's vision. Robert Kinoshita, having already mastered the humanoid look with Robbie, deliberately pivoted toward a more utilitarian, tank-like design for the B9. He moved the weight to the bottom with those iconic tank tread feet and used a bellows midsection to give the machine a unique accordion-style range of motion. Kinoshita's most brilliant design choice for the B9 was the translucent brain dome. Unlike Robbie's fixed head, the B9's dome allowed viewers to see the internal sensors and the spinning neon lights, which made it easier for the audience to read the machine's state of mind. This transparency was key to the humanization of the robot. It gave the impression that the robot was thinking. The suit was built in two main sections to allow Bob May, the actor inside the robot, to step in through the torso. While it looked like solid metal, it was actually a complex assembly of fiberglass, plexiglass, and rubber, a masterpiece of mid-century engineering. It managed to be both a functional suit and a believable piece of future tech. Kinoshita often noted that his biggest challenge was the human element. He said that putting a person inside a robot really impairs a designer. He had to carefully camouflage the actor's dimensions to make the audience wonder where the human ended and the machine began. Because these suits were so top-heavy, Kinoshita had to engineer a specific shuffle for the feet to keep the actor safe. This wasn't just about aesthetics. It was a delicate balance of engineering and safety. The plot of War of the Robots starts with Will and the robot finding the Robotoid, a machine of vastly superior intellect and power than the B9. For the Robinson family, and specifically for the robot, this discovery quickly turns into an existential crisis. The conflict isn't just about who has the better sensors, it's logic versus loyalty. Will's parents and the Jupiter 2 crew see the Robotoid as the ultimate tool for their survival. But Will sees something else. He sees his best friend being pushed toward the scrap heap. The script originally had more dialogue, emphasizing the robot's sadness, but Bill Mumy and Bob May played the scenes with such chemistry that the director, Sobey Martin, realized that they didn't need that many words. The visual of the small boy comforting the giant, silent machine said it all. There's a heartbreaking sequence where the B9 robot is essentially told that he is obsolete by Dr. Smith. In a show that would eventually lean heavily into Smith's comedic antics, this season 1 moment is surprisingly harsh.
Say goodbye to the others for me.
I will. Goodbye.
Especially Will.
Yes, goodbye.
This is where the emotional core of the series shines. Will Robinson refuses to accept the logic of the situation. He defends the B9, not because he's the best machine, but because he has heart. Up until this moment, the robot was essentially a high-tech appliance, a rolling Swiss Army knife designed for environmental control. But War of the Robots forced a transformation that no software update could provide. By introducing the Robotoid, a machine that was technically perfect but emotionally hollow, the writers inadvertently highlighted what was missing from the B9. It was in the shadow of his own obsolescence that the robot finally became humanized. This was a pivot point for the entire series. For the rest of the run, the robot was no longer just a tool for the Robinsons to use. He became the family's emotional anchor. That shift from logic to loyalty redefined his bond with Will and set the stage for the legendary dynamic that would carry Lost in Space through the rest of its run.
Goodbye, Will. Beware of the Robotoid. Goodbye.
When the Robinsons finally realize that the Robotoid isn't there to protect them, it sets up the ultimate theme of the episode. A perfect machine is no match for a loyal one. By the time we head toward the final confrontation, we're rooting for the robot with a heart, who actually cares if the Robinsons live or die. While Robbie was known by the clinical cold title of the Robotoid, the crew of Lost in Space had a much more affectionate name for their own robot. Kinoshita later revealed that despite hundreds of fan suggestions for a formal name, the production team simply called the robot Blinky. So this episode, War of the Robots, is the exact moment where Blinky finally became the heart of the family that we saw on screen. So who won the War of the Robots? Well, on paper, the Robotoid was the superior machine. He was taller, stronger, and more advanced. But as the episode proves, superiority is a cold comfort in the depths of space. War of the Robots succeeded because it did more than just provide a geeky crossover for 1966 audiences. It humanized the B9 robot once and for all. It took him from a piece of environmental equipment to a character with a soul. Without the emotional stakes of this episode, the robot might never have become the unsung breakout star of the series. Today, both of these Robert Kinoshita designs are enshrined in the pantheon of science fiction. Robbie the Robot went on to dozens more appearances, from The Twilight Zone to Columbo, but he was never as formidable as he was here. And the B9 robot? This was his coming-of-age story. It proved that in the Irwin Allen universe, heart always beats hardware. Whether you're a fan of the sleek 1950s curves of Robbie or the charm of the B9 robot, this episode is still the ultimate tribute to a golden era of practical effects and character-driven sci-fi. If you were lost in space, which robot would you want by your side? Now, if you like classic movies, TV, and nostalgia, I really think you're going to love it here at Rerun Zone. So like, share, subscribe, and become a channel member. It helps me to keep making these videos about the classics that I don't want to fade into distant memory. As always, thanks for watching. This is Rich from Rerun Zone. I'll see you next time, and have a good night.